Hello boys and girls, I'm Debbie Lincoln, and today I'm here to talk to you about coloring. 2 stories about Duncan and his crayons. I bet all of you like to color, and do you know you don't have to give it up when you stop being a kid, because there are clubs now and adult coloring books, and people go as adults to color together. So don't give it up just because you think it's just for little kids. Today I'm going to tell you about Duncan and his crayons, and they had a little bit of a problem, and I bet this never happened to you. The first book is called The Day the Crayons Quit, and it's by Drew Daywalt with illustrations by Oliver Jeffers. And the crayons are saying, "Boo! Down with this sort of thing. We are not happy." So let's find out what's going on with Duncan and his crayons. The Day the Crayons Quit. One day in class, Duncan went to take his crayons out and found a stack of letters with his name on them. To Duncan. "Hey Duncan, it's me, Red Crayon. We need to talk. You make me work harder than any of your other crayons. All year long, I wear myself out coloring fire engines, apples, strawberries, and everything else that's red. I even work on holidays. I have to color all the Santas at Christmas and all the hearts on Valentine's Day. I need a rest. Your overworked friend, Red Crayon." "Dear Duncan, all right, listen. I love that I'm your favorite crayon for grapes, dragons, and wizard's hats, but it makes me crazy that so much of my gorgeous color goes outside the lines. If you don't start coloring inside the lines soon, I'm going to completely lose it. Your very neat friend, Purple Crayon." "Dear Duncan, I'm tired of being called light brown or dark tan because I am neither. I am beige and I am proud. I'm also tired of being second place to Mr. Brown Crayon. It's not fair that Brown gets all the bears, ponies, and puppies, while the only things I get are turkey dinners, if I'm lucky, and wheat. And let's face it, let's be honest, when was the last time you saw a kid excited about coloring wheat? Your beige friend, Beige Crayon." "Duncan, Gray Crayon here. You're killing me. I know you love elephants, and I know that elephants are gray, but that's a lot of space to color in all by myself. And don't even get me started on rhinos, hippos, and humpback whales. You know how tired I am after handling one of those things? Such big animals. Baby penguins are gray too, you know. So are tiny rocks, pebbles. How about one of those once in a while to give me a break? Your very tired friend, Gray Crayon." "Dear Duncan, you color with me, but why? Most of the time, I'm the same color as the page you're using me on, white. If I didn't have a black outline, you wouldn't even know I was there. I'm not even in the rainbow. I'm only used to color snow or to fill in empty space between other things, and it leaves me feeling, well, empty. We need to talk. Your empty friend, White Crayon." "Hi, Duncan. I hate being used to draw the outline of things that are colored in by other colors, all of which think they're brighter than me. It's not fair when you use me to draw a nice beach ball and then fill in the colors of the ball with all the other crayons. How about a black beach ball sometime? Is that too much to ask? Your friend, Black Crayon." "Dear Duncan, as Green Crayon, I am writing for 2 reasons. One is to say that I like my workload of crocodiles, trees, dinosaurs, and frogs. I have no problems and wish to congratulate you on a very successful coloring things green career so far. The second reason I write is for my friends Yellow Crayon and Orange Crayon who are no longer speaking to each other. Both crayons feel they should be the color of the sun. Please settle this soon because they're driving the rest of us crazy. Your happy friend, Green Crayon. Dear Duncan, Yellow Crayon here. I need you to tell Orange Crayon that I am the color of the sun. I would tell him, but we are no longer speaking. And I can prove that I am the color of the sun, too. Last Tuesday, you used me to color the sun in your Happy Farm coloring book. In case you've forgotten, it's on page 7. You can't miss me. I'm shining down brilliantly on a field of yellow corn. Your pal and the true color of the sun, Yellow Crayon. Dear Duncan, I see Yellow Crayon already talked to you, the big whiner. Anyway, could you please tell Mr. Tattletale that he is not the color of the sun? I would, but we're no longer speaking. We both know I am clearly the color of the sun because on Thursday, you used me to color the sun on both the Monkey Island and the Meet the Zookeeper pages in your Day at the Zoo coloring book. Aren't you glad I'm here? Your pal and the real color of the sun, Orange Crayon. Dear Duncan, it has been great being your favorite color this past year, and the year before, and the year before that. I have really enjoyed all those oceans, lakes, rivers, raindrops, rain clouds, and clear skies. But the bad news is that I am so short and stubby, I can't even see over the railing in the crayon box anymore. Your very stubby friend, Blue Crayon. Duncan, okay, listen here, kid. You have not used me once in the past year. It's because you think I'm a girl's color, isn't it? Speaking of which, please tell your little sister I said thank you for using me to color her in the Little Princess coloring book. I think she did a fabulous job of staying inside the lines. Now, back to us. Could you please use me sometime to color the occasional pink dinosaur or monster or cowboy? Goodness knows they could use a splash of color. Your unused friend, Pink Crayon. Hey, Duncan, it's me, Peach Crayon. Why did you peel off my paper wrapping? Now I'm naked and too embarrassed to leave the crayon box. I don't even have any underwear. How would you like to go to school naked? I need some clothes. Help! Your naked friend, Peach Crayon. Well, poor Duncan just wanted to color, and of course he wanted his crayons to be happy. And that gave him an idea. When Duncan showed his teacher his new picture, she gave him A for coloring and an A+ for creativity, and all the crayons were happy. The end, for a little bit. Because then there came the day the crayons came home. Also by Drew Daywalt and illustrations by Oliver Jeffers. So there's going to be some more trouble. The day the crayons came home. One day, Duncan and his crayons were happily coloring together when a strange stack of postcards arrived for him in the mail. Hello from the rug? Dear Duncan, not sure if you remember me. My name is Maroon Crayon. You only colored with me once to draw a scab, but whatever. Anyway, you lost me 2 years ago in the couch when your dad sat on me and broke me in half. I never would have survived had Paperclip not nursed me back to health. I'm finally better, so come get me. And can Paperclip come too? He's really holding me together. Sincerely, your marooned crayon, Maroon Crayon. Dear Duncan, no one likes peas. No one even likes the color pea green. So I'm changing my name and running away to see the world. Sincerely, Esteban the Magnificent, or the crayon formerly known as pea green. Hi, Duncan. It's me, Neon Red Crayon. Remember that great vacation we had with your family? Remember how we laughed when we drew a picture of your dad's sunburn? Remember dropping me by the hotel pool when you left? Clearly you do not, because I'm still here. How could you miss me? Anyway, after 8 months waiting for you to come get me, I guess I'm walking back. Your left behind friend, Neon Red Crayon. Duncan, it's us, yellow and orange. We know we used to argue over which of us was the color of the sun, but guess what? Neither of us wants to be the color of the sun anymore. Not since we were left outside and the sun melted us together. You know the real color of the sun? Hot. That's what. We're sorry for arguing. You can make green the sun for all we care. Just bring us home. Your not so sunny friends, yellow and orange. Hey, Duncan, I'm sure you don't recognize me after the horrors I've been through. I think I was tan crayon, or maybe burnt sienna. I don't know. I can't tell anymore. Have you ever been eaten by a dog and puked up on the living room rug? Because I have. I have been eaten by a dog and puked up on the rug, Duncan. And it's not pretty. Not pretty at all. I'm more carpet fuzz than crayon now. Can you please bring me back? Your undigestible friend, tan or possibly burnt sienna crayon. Dearest Duncan, could you please open the front door? I still need to see the world. Sincerely, Esteban the Magnificent. Hey, Duncan, remember last Halloween we told your little brother there was a ghost under the basement stairs? And then we drew the scary stuff on the wall? Sure was funny when he ran screaming, right? But it wasn't so funny when you forgot to take me out of the basement. Please come get me. I'm kind of terribly horrified. Your scared friend, glow-in-the-dark crayon. Dear Duncan, looks like I'm almost home. Been through China and Canada and France, I think. Just crossing New Jersey by camel now. New Jersey has giant pyramids, right? See you soon, Neon Red Crayon. P.S. Next stop, the North Pole, I think. Duncan, does page 8 of Pirate Island ring a bell? Kind of a big payday for Captain Greenbeard there, don't you think? And no bronze or silver in that pile, huh? I told you it'd make me blunt if you colored each coin individually. But would you listen? No. I also told you those stupid crayon sharpeners never work. Did you listen to that? Also, no. Now I can't color anything at all. Your pointless friend, Gold Crayon. And the pencil says, I had to write it for him. And the pencil sharpener says, this is not fun for me either, you know. Dear Duncan, I've seen the world. It's rainy. I'm coming back. Esteban the Magnificent. Dear Duncan, you're probably wondering why my head is stuck to your sock. A question I ask myself every day. Well, it's because last week you left me in your pocket and I ended up in the dryer. I landed on your sock and now he's stuck to my head. Could you please come get me? Also, why does everything you wear still smell after it's washed? Your stinky, socky, stucky on head buddy, turquoise crayon. P.S. Sock says hi. Dear Mr. Duncan, I know I'm not your crayon. I know I belong to your baby brother, but I can't take him anymore. In the last week alone, he's bitten the top off my head, put me in the cat's nose, drawn on the wall, and tried to color garbage with me. The worst part is he is a terrible artist. I can't tell what his drawings are. Donkeys? Monkeys? Donkey monkeys? Picasso said every child is an artist, but I don't know. I don't think he met your brother. Please rescue me. Your desperate friend, Big Chunky Toddler Crayon. Duncan, greetings from the Amazon rainforest. Making great time. I think I'm almost home. Neon Red Crayon. Hello, Duncan. It's me, Brown Crayon. You know exactly why I ran away, buddy. Everyone thinks I get all the great coloring jobs. Candy bars, puppies, ponies. Lucky me, right? Bet they don't know what else you used me to color, do they? I don't think so. The rest of that drawing was great, but did it really need that final brown scribble? I'll come back, but please let's stick to candy bars, okay? Your very embarrassed friend, Brown Crayon. Bear Goes into the Woods by Duncan. Duncan was sad to learn of all the crayons he'd lost, forgotten, broken, or neglected over the years. So he ran around gathering them up. But Duncan's crayons were all so damaged and differently shaped than they used to be that they no longer fit in the crayon box. So Duncan had an idea. He built a place where each crayon would always feel at home. The Crayon Fort. There's no dogs down there, are there? Nope, no turkeys either. No dogs allowed. All crayons welcome. Oh, you flatter me, but it's not real chocolate. Let's have a party. This one is from my blue period, but it's not really blue, more lilac. I think that door is for us. Ah, there you are. I could use a haircut. Hope there's not a metal detector. No, I think everyone is welcome. Looks good, lads. Who are you wearing? Oh, I think he goes by Ted. I'm Ted. And then in Cleveland, I got to hike the Great Wall of China. The end. Everyone's happy now, all the crayons and Duncan. And I hope you'll continue to color and make great crayons and have a wonderful time like Duncan. Thank you for listening, kids.
Hi, kids. It's story time. Coming to you from the Passios building on Lunenburg's fabulous network. I'm Uncle Pete. I've read stories to you before. And the story I'm going to read to you today is a true story about a true person who lived not far from here a couple of 100 years ago. And you wouldn't think there'd be much of any interest in someone who lived that long ago, enough to write a story about. But this guy did something which was so out of the ordinary, he ended up in jail over it. He grew a beard. And you say, so what? Half the athletes that play on television have beards. 200 years ago, it was considered un-American to grow a beard. You didn't fit in with everybody else. You didn't look like everybody else. And what changed that was a little girl wrote a letter to Abraham Lincoln suggesting that if he grew a beard, it would fill out his gaunt face and make him look more presidential. And he did. And for the next 50 years, every single president had facial hair, up until Woodrow Wilson. And now, of course, growing a beard is quite common. This story is called The Quite Contrary Man, a true American tale by Patricia Rush Hyatt and illustrated by Catherine Brown. The pictures in this are fabulous. So here we go. Back in the days of your great-great-great-great-grandparents, very near the New England village where Johnny Appleseed was born, there lived a quite contrary man. His name was Joseph Palmer, and he'd grown up stubborn since the cradle. Neighbors knew him as the kind of youngster who'd pour gravy on popcorn or vinegar on pancakes and declare they tasted better that way. His mother fretted. What would become of her pig-headed son? By the time he'd grown up and started a family of his own, people called Joseph Palmer the most contrary, headstrong fellow in all of New England. Straight-laced folks tried to look and act like each other in those days, which meant looking plain and acting proper. Women pulled their hair back into tightly twisted top knots. Say that 3 times. Tightly twisted top knots. Men shaved their faces bare. No one dared to stand out from the neighbors, except Joseph Palmer. He grew a beard. Not just any wispy, wimpy beard. Joseph Palmer's mighty beard broke all boundaries. It flowed from chin to belly and from elbow to elbow. If Joseph Palmer faced the wind, his whopping whiskers swept over his shoulders and flapped down to his hip pockets. His neighbors were shocked. Beard Palmer, as many called him, which I have trouble saying because I say it like a Yankee. I should say Beard Palmer instead of Beard Palmer, as many called him, turned heads on the streets. Wherever he walked, people ran ahead to gaze back at his bushy face. The townspeople shouted, "Un-American!" And policemen had to clear the gawkers and shouters off the sidewalks so that Beard Palmer and his family could pass. His old mother worried. What would become of her pig-headed son? Joseph Palmer's children, Thomas and Nancy, loved their father just as he was. It wasn't only his beard that made him special. He had so many clever ways of doing and dealing with things. Once, he taught Thomas how to lure a runaway calf out of the herb garden, not by chasing him, but by sticking out a thumb for the calf to suck. With the calf latched onto his fist, Thomas could walk out the gate and shut it with his free hand. And every Saturday night, after Thomas and Nancy's chores, their papa sliced up dark and light corn cobs for a homemade game of checkers. Imagine that, making checkers out of corn cobs. Pretty clever. They didn't have Amazon in those days. It was just as well they had so much fun on Saturday nights, because every Sunday morning the Palmer family headed for church, where Thomas and Nancy, their mother, and their grandmother got ready for another tiresome lecture about the beard. The beard's a disgrace. It's a sin, the churchgoers cried. The preacher scolded Beard Palmer from the pulpit. Why do you go around looking like the devil? You must shave and cut your hair. No, I will not, said Beard Palmer. He knew every one of the 203 Bible verses about beards by heart. He often recited them to Reverend Trask, and he always ended by saying, "This beard belongs to me, and it's mine. mine on my face. It's my right alone to cut or grow it. Early one weekday morning, when the sun was just winking over nearby Bald Hill, Beard Palmer left his farm and walked on foot to the market with a basket full of cucumbers. Suddenly, tall shadows fell across his path. 4 neighbors blocked his way, brandishing barber's shears, a water basin, soap and lather, and a razor. "We're gonna give you a shave or else," they shouted. Beard Palmer punched, kicked, and hit. He overturned the water basin, broke the shears, and flung the razor in the grass, and the attackers ran off without cutting a single hair. Beard Palmer's arms and legs ached from the fight, but he collected his spilled cucumbers and walked on to town. The 4 men got there first. They went straight to court and blamed Beard Palmer for attacking them. The judge called Beard Palmer before the bunch and fined him $10. That was far more money than Beard Palmer earned on the year's cucumber crop. He refused to pay the fine, so the judge sent Beard Palmer to jail for a whole year. His family was stunned. The jailer told Beard Palmer his rule: prisoners must shave every week. Of course, Beard Palmer refused. Whenever he saw the jailer coming with a bowl of soapy water and a razor, he threw himself on his bunk and kicked like fury. Beard Palmer's old mother despaired. What would become of her pig-headed son? She begged him to shave. Jail time might go easier. "No, dear mother, I will not," he said. Beard Palmer's wife told her mother-in-law, "Even though he is stubborn, I know he is right. He should be free to keep his beard." His family visited him every day. Thomas carried his papa's suppers to jail in a wooden bucket. Beard Palmer gave him letters to carry out under the crumpled napkins. The letters were to the editor of the local newspaper. They told how badly prisoners were treated in jail. "We have no blankets," Beard Palmer wrote, "and we are beset with mice and fleas." Thomas always delivered the letters. When one of them was printed, many newspaper readers took Beard Palmer's side. The jailer was furious. He moved Beard Palmer to the cellar of the prison to punish him for complaining in print. "Thomas, oh Thomas," Beard Palmer cried out when he spied his son's boots outside the cellar window. Thomas crouched and brushed away a snowdrift so he could see his papa way down in the underground room. "Papa, it's so dank and dark down there. Will they let me bring you candles? How can you stand it so?" Beard Palmer shushed his son's worries. "Thomas, I want you to tie a stone to a string, hold it fast to your end, and drop the stone through the window bars so I can catch it." Thomas obeyed as fast as he could, and when he pulled the string up again, he found tied to it still another letter. "Oh no," Thomas almost moaned aloud. Hadn't his papa made enough trouble? Would the jailer ever send Papa home again? "I need you to take that letter to the High Sheriff," Beard Palmer shouted up. "I shall soon be out of this dungeon and back in the sunlight." Thomas ran off with the letter. The High Sheriff frowned as he read it. Then he folded the page and said, "I think it's not right to punish your father so harshly, shutting him up alone in the dark for 3 months. I'll see he's returned upstairs to his old cell." "Thank you, sir," said Thomas, relieved that one of his father's many letters had finally made something good happen. On Beard Palmer's last day in jail, his family dressed in their best and went to the town sheriff's office to wait. The jailer brought Beard Palmer out of his cell and then in front of his family handed him a bill for the dry biscuits and water he'd eaten and all the coal he'd used for heat. Does he have to pay to stay in jail? Beard Palmer was outraged. I refuse to pay, he shouted. Then he held tight to the bars and refused to leave the jail. The town sheriff told Beard Palmer to borrow money to pay his bill, but Beard Palmer again refused. He hunkered down in his chair and sat tight. What shall we do with this contrary man? The jailer and sheriff asked each other. They never had a prisoner who refused to go when his time was up. Sadly, the Palmer family said goodbye to Beard Palmer again and trudged back to their rented room next to the jailhouse. His old mother wept. What would become of her pig-headed son? He was stubborn, but she missed him. They all did. That night, Thomas and Nancy carried their blankets to the window and kept watch over the jailhouse. They were too disappointed to sleep. As the moon rose full, they saw the jailer and sheriff walking in circles in the road, muttering to each other. Their dinners were growing cold, and they wanted to go home. A half hour later, the two men marched back into the jail. And minutes later, they carried Beard Palmer's chair outside with Beard Palmer still in it like a king on a throne. They left him in the open roadway and headed home for supper. The next morning, the chair was empty. Just a note in the back here. There are probably no other gravestones in the world like Beard Palmer's. He is buried in the Old North Leominster, Massachusetts, Evergreen Cemetery on Route 13. His memorial was designed by his son, Dr. Thomas Palmer, who became a prosperous dentist in nearby Fitchburg. It reads, "Persecuted for wearing the beard." And I went and visited that in preparation for this story, and here's a picture of that stone. So kids, moral of the story is don't afraid to be different from other people. You are yourself, you are what you are, and that's great. And goodbye from Uncle Pete for now. We'll see you down the road again sometime with another good story. So long.
Well, hello everybody. Here we are reading another outstanding selection. We have a book today called The Bear That Heard Crying. And it's considered maybe like historical fiction because it's about an event that really happened up in New Hampshire. I believe it's a little town that's still there. And the woman that wrote this, the author, whose name is Natalie Kinsey Warnick, and her sister, Helen Kinsey, were family members of the people that this occurred, as it was way back in the 1700s in New Hampshire. The illustrator is Ted Rand. They're lovely illustrations. So we're going to read this story, find out a little bit about how the author came upon this story, and we'll go from there. So the author's note says, the story of Sarah Whicher is true. Sarah was only 3 years old when she got lost in the woods near Warren, New Hampshire, in June of 1783. For 4 days, people from surrounding towns looked for her, and just when the search was about to be called off, Mr. Heath showed up and found her, according to his dream. When she was older, Sarah wrote down what she remembered of those days in the woods and the big black dog that found her. Many of the searchers wrote down their accounts also. It was these accounts that my sister Helen found in an old history of Warren, New Hampshire, while doing genealogical research. And we went together to research where the Whichers lived and where Sarah got lost. The story is all the more special to me because Sarah Whicher was my great-great-great-great-great aunt. Her brother, Jeremiah, born in 1790, 7 years after Sarah was lost, was my great-great-great-great-grandfather. No record is given as to what happened to the bear. I hope it lived a long and contented life. All right, and here we go with the story. On a warm afternoon in June 1783, Sarah Whicher got lost in the woods. The day began like any other Sunday. No axes rang out in the great pine woods because Sundays were a day of rest. A church hadn't been built yet on Pine Hill, so Papa, Joseph, Reuben, John, Betty, and Sarah, who was 3 years old, sat under the trees near their cabin while Mama read from the Bible. "It's a beautiful day," said Papa to Mama after dinner. "Let's walk to the summit and see Chase and Hannah's new baby." Ooh, Sarah loved her Uncle Chase. He took her for walks in the woods, and he showed her bobcat tracks and fox dens. And once he took her to a hollow tree on Pine Hill that the bees had filled with honey. Mama put on her hat, and she and Papa walked along the path into the woods, and Sarah ran after them. "I'm coming too," she said. "No, Sarah," Mama said. "It's too far for you to walk. You must stay home with Betty and your brothers." Sarah meant to be a good girl, but she wanted to see Uncle Chase and the new baby. So when Mama and Papa were out of sight, Sarah followed them. She walked along Berry Brook, where the trout swam in the deep green pools, and high above her head, squirrels and gray jays scolded her. The trees grew so tall, Sarah was sure they touched the sky. "I'll pick some flowers for Aunt Hannah," Sarah thought. She was so busy looking for wildflowers, she wandered from the path and into the deep woods. She ate some wild strawberries and picked a bunch of wood sorrel and dogtooth violets. Then a bobcat leaped over a log, scaring her, but he bounded past, chasing a rabbit. Sarah walked on and on. Blackberry brambles scratched her hands and feet, and her legs were tired. "I hope Papa and Mama come back soon," she thought. But Mama and Papa never came. Darkness crept into the woods. The wind moaned through the trees like a crying animal. Sarah wanted to cry just hearing it. She was too tired to walk now anyway, so she sat on a mossy rock. She tried to be brave, and the wood seemed too big and too dark, and before she knew it, she was crying. She was hungry and so tired, and she wanted to go home. What was keeping Mama and Papa so long? Sarah heard branches crackling. She held her breath, listening. Something was crashing through the bushes, coming right at her. A big black head poked through the bushes, coming right at her. Sarah said, "Oh, a black dog has found me. He will show me the way home." But it wasn't a dog that Sarah had found. It was a shaggy bear as black as the night. Sarah was glad to see the dog. Now that she didn't feel so lonely, she patted his long brown nose and hugged him around the neck. The bear sniffed her face and licked the strawberry juice from her hands and the blood from her feet where the blackberry brambles had scratched her. Sarah put her head on his shoulder, and the bear lay down beside her. Sarah snuggled into his thick, warm fur. "Papa and Mama will find me tomorrow," she thought. And then she fell asleep. Well, back on the path, Mama and Papa were hurrying home. The children ran to greet them. "Why did you leave Sarah at Uncle Chase's?" Reuben asked. "We didn't leave her," said Papa. "We told her to stay home with you." "She hasn't been here all day," Joseph cried. "We thought she'd gone with you." Mama's face turned white. "Sarah is lost in the woods," she cried. Reuben grabbed the dinner horn and bolted for the woods. Mama ran to the Richardsons, their nearest neighbors, for help. Other neighbors came. They shouted into the forest and built great fires, hoping Sarah would see them. But Sarah didn't come back. No one slept that night. Papa searched the woods in the dark. Mama sat by the open door all night, listening for Sarah. In the morning, the news of the lost child had traveled over the mountains and valleys. All who heard it left their farms and hurried to Pine Hill. Some of the neighbors left their oxen yoked in the fields. Joseph Patch came with his long-barreled gun. For 3 days, people searched for Sarah through the darkest forests of Moose Hillock Mountain up to Oak Falls and all along the path up to the Oliverian River, where it tumbled out of the dark ravine along Black Mountain. Every night they returned, hungry, tired, and discouraged because they had not found Sarah. Late in the afternoon, one of the men burst out of the woods. He was breathing hard from running. "I found Sarah's footprints near Berry Brook," he said, but there were bear tracks next to them. "She's been torn to pieces," several people said in the crowd. Mama covered her face with her hands. The children looked at each other, but didn't say a word. "She'll never be found," someone said. "We might as well give up." "No," said Mama. "Don't give up yet. Please look for her one more day." The searchers were sure that the bear had killed Sarah, but no one wanted to say that to Mama, so they agreed. They looked one more day, but no one expected to find Sarah. At daylight, the woods filled again with people. Mrs. Richardson stayed at the Whitcher cabin to bake a bushel of beans to feed the searchers. She was busy by the fire when she heard a knock at the door. A man stood there. He was dusty and tired and looked as if he'd walked a great distance. "My name is Heath," he said. "I can find the child." Just then Joseph Patch came out from the clearing. "What makes you think you can find her when we've looked for 4 days with no luck?" he said. "Last evening I heard that a little girl was lost," Mr. Heath said. 3 times during the night I dreamed I found her lying under a great pine tree near the path where it crosses Berry Brook. A bear was guarding her." "I don't know as I believe it," said Mr. Patch, "but I'll take you along the path." When the path crossed Berry Brook, Mr. Heath stopped. He looked around, and then he plunged through the bushes. Mr. Patch followed him, and there was Sarah, sleeping under a large pine tree, just as Mr. Heath said she would be, and there were bear tracks all around her. Sarah opened her eyes and sat up. "I want to go to Mama," she said. Joseph Patch fired his gun into the air and then picked her up and carried her home. Everyone they met ran ahead of them, shouting and waving their hats. They all talked about Mr. Heath's wonderful dream. Papa and Mama heard the shots and hurried back to the cabin. They heard the shouts of the crowd, "John, Sarah, we have found her." And then they saw Sarah in Joseph Patch's arms, coming home. Mama fainted. Papa couldn't say a word, but he smoked his pipe as hard as he could. Joseph, Reuben, and John whooped and hollered, and Betty clapped her hands. "Sarah's home! Sarah's home!" she sang. "She must be famished, poor thing," said Mrs. Richardson as she hurried to fix her some soup. Papa carried Sarah into the house. He sat in the rocker, holding her tight. "Did you see anyone in the woods?" Papa asked her. "A big black dog stayed with me every night," Sarah said. "He was friendly, and his fur was warm." Well, Papa kind of looked at Mama, and Mama looked at Papa, and no one told Sarah that that large black dog had been a bear. Never had such a feast been prepared. Mrs. Richardson brought out pans of her baked beans, and the women made venison stew, hasty pudding, and cornbread with honey. Papa said a prayer of thanksgiving, and everyone sang. All the men blew their horns, fired their guns over and over until all the powder on Pine Hill was used up. So great was the joy that Sarah was found. So it's a true story. They found the little girl. She was all right. All those people came to help, including Mr. Heath, who had the dream. That was all true. Maybe not all of those conversations were the exact words they said. But if you ever want to look into it a little more, it's all there in Warren, New Hampshire. So thank you for listening tonight.